Hi everyone, Scott Weaver from Factory Direct Designers Workroom. Today we're going to have the ultimate showdown. Graber Cell Shade / Honeycomb against the Kirsch Honeycomb / Cell Shade. We're going to go over the mounting, how to install them, and how they work. We're also going to get into how many lift cords they have. We're going to get into the in-depth of which shade is going to last you longer. So this is the ultimate showdown between two major brands. Stick with me. We'll be right back. Alright, so we're going to explain these two shades with you. This is the Graber Honeycomb Shade, sometimes they're called Cellular Shade, and this one's the Kirsch. Now, there's some big differences between them, believe it or not, and I just wanted to explain a few things. So we're going to start with the brackets. This is the mounting bracket for the Graber. This is the mounting bracket for a standard Kirsch. And this is how they'd be set up. These are in your window frame. This is how they'd be set up. Now, the first thing I'm going to point out, the Kirsch, for installation wise, takes twice as many screws as the Graber. You only need one screw in the middle for the Graber. And the Kirsch, you happen to use two. I'm not saying this is a determining factor. I'm just saying that it does take twice as many screws for the same shade. And I don't see where you really do need to have 4 screws in the shades. I did find that these brackets work fine with only the single screw. So I just want to point that out first off. Now the second we're going to talk about is how the brackets are put onto the shades. Because here's a big fundamental difference that I found. On a Graber shade, this is the back side of the Graber shade, and that's what the top looks like. You can install these brackets almost any place on your window, and these will snap in and snap in. And it doesn't matter where along this shade that this bracket's put in. However, not so much on a Kirsch. Let me show you the difference. The Kirsch shade, this is referred to as the motor inside here. I don't know why they call it that, but that's what they call it. It's not an electric. I guess it would be a wind. It's a wind system. So you can't just put this anyplace. It won't fit. Matter of fact, you have to be very precise on where you put these brackets. For instance, this bracket can only go in here because it locks into this right along here. So when you're putting it in, you really have to be careful when you're placing this bracket in here. Very hard to do it, but I can show you here. This is the shade. So you really have to line these up to be able to snap them in. In this case, that's all locked in. But if you don't have it quite locked in correctly, or have the brackets in the right location, you are going to have to move them. Now, you're going to say, well, this is a small shade, so yes, it's crammed. However, even on the large shades, the larger the shade you have more of these wind systems or motors, and you still have to be careful where you're putting this bracket. And I find that with Kirsch, many of their shades use the same type of brackets, and because they fit inside the shade to get it in, that does lead to a little bit of a problem with the installation versus the Graber that'll just lock in any place. Now another difference you're going to have to look at is that this has a nice dust cover on it. And not that that's always important. If it's inside mounted, inside the window frame, that would act as a dust cover. However, I have taken a lot of these down. I found bugs and a lot of times you'll be working on your house, there'll be sheetrock dust, and it does interfere because these have large grommets, fairly large grommets for where the lift cords are. So having the dust cover on the top is very nice. So that's my version of the installation part of it. Now let's talk about how they're made. And this is another big difference that I found. I was kind of shocked about it. But I'm going to point this out. When you look at this shade, first of all, there's a couple things. But if you look at where these strings come, and I'm going to come up a little closer so you can see. I want you to take notice that the cords come from here and they have to turn an extreme angle into the grommet on both sides. Now if this is a larger shade you'd have more of these, but it's got the same thing. It doesn't go directly in here. So as this is going up and down, it's constantly rubbing on those grommets. And I have found over time that does weaken the lip cords and they do stretch out. And over time what will happen is the shade will just be in its down position. If you've ever had these, you've probably found that, or the strings have been broken inside. I do find that that's a key error that I think Kirsch is making. Another just kind of a thing to show you, there's a clip right here. Now this is put in by the manufacturer. This clip right here is what's called a friction clip, and it can be removed. And what I've found is that when they feel that the shade isn't quite right, doesn't have enough friction to stay up, they keep adding these. And they'll add one if it's just a little. Then if they need more, they put another one to this side. And I used to carry them, to be honest with you. When we sold these Kirsch, which we still sell some Kirsch, we used to carry them and put them in when shades started to fail. It's in it, and eventually it still would fail. Now, let's open this up and let's see what this has to offer us as far as, let me just put this down a little bit, as far as how this is made, because it is made completely different. And this kind of surprised me when I got into these. Remove this cover. I really got locked in here. Usually they're just a little easier to get off. There we go. Okay. This shade has the strings go directly into the holes, which I like that idea. Because then there's not the tension or the drag that this has in it. And I've also found the Grabers do last longer, to be honest with you. So you also want to keep that in mind, that the motors, this is what they're using right here, which is a coil spring. It's a little different. Now if you get a larger shade, it's going to have 2 or 3 of these on here to pull it. But now we're also going to talk about one other thing. And this is why, if you just listen to them, you can hear the difference. Okay, now listen to this. This is the Kirsch. This is the Graber. This by far runs so much smoother than this. You can just hear the difference between it. It just, and when you feel how it runs, when you're actually feeling it, there's a lot of lag in it compared to the smoothness that the Kirsch offers. So I also want you to keep that in mind. Now I want you to look at a larger one so you can see what a larger one of the Graber looks like, because I was also a little bit impressed by that. I also like about the larger is this offers 3 lift cords, and this shade is only 34 and a quarter inches wide. So I like the fact that they've put 3 of them in here opposed to the 2. Now I've noticed with Kirsch you would really only find 2 sets of these in something that's small. So I really do like that they're using or adding a middle string in here. Also, you can see where they've added a double motor. Yes, I know this sounds strange to say motor, but that's basically what these are. And the way they work is when you pull down on the shade, these actually tighten. So when you go back up, they loosen up and they wind the cords, and it's basically the same theory here. So whether you pick a Kirsch or a Graber, I'm going to say if you had your choice, and they're all using pretty much the same type of fabrics. So I'm not going to get into the fabrics because both of them offer different types of fabrics. Between non-wovens that they can get as high as using a shear. So in that aspect of it, I'm not going to make any comments on it. I'm only commenting on which one I think is going to be more reliable, which one I think is going to be easier to install, whether it's putting 2 screws in a bracket or 1 screw. I just think it's all noteworthy. And you can leave me comments if you feel I'm being unfair, but in my tests, I believe that the Graber by far beats the Kirsch shade. Thanks for watching.